All right, hello Instagram. Give it a moment so people know that I am live right now. Hello, welcome. Welcome. Hi, beauty. Awesome. Thanks for hopping on, everyone. Happy Friday. If it's Friday where you are, I know some parts of the world might be on a different day at the moment. Beautiful. All right, so it's been a minute since I have hopped on to do a live. I'm going to be doing a series of lives this month because it's a big month over here at Shakti Temple Arts. We are getting ready for, hi Feather, welcome. We're getting ready for the Temple of Shakti, which is our, it's become our signature program, or my signature program, I should say, but it's ours, it's all of ours. And I ran it for the first time last year, and it's coming up at the end of the month. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of lives kind of about what we're diving into in Temple of Shakti, and we'll focus on different themes with the different lives. And so welcome, welcome. So today's theme that we're going to look at is Living Tantra, which is one that is essentially the entire foundation of my work. So we're going to be unpacking what Living Tantra is, and then we're going to be going even deeper into how that relates to Temple of Shakti, the upcoming 6-month group mentorship program, and just a look at what is Tantra, really, and how do we apply the principles of Tantra in our lives for more meaning, for deeper embodiment. I mean, there's just so much. Tantra is something that will infuse every aspect of our lives, from the conscious to the material. It's all of it. So I am today welcoming you into my humble little home temple. You can see Durga back there and Nataraj, and so you get to join me in my little home temple. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just dive in. I never quite know where these talks are going to go. I'm going to try not to go on and on, but I can talk when I get into these realms, so we'll see what happens today. So first of all, I just want to share a little bit of my background. If you are hopping on here and you're one of my newer followers, my name is Halo, and I have been, I think like so many of us, when I found Tantra, I thought it was one thing, and then as the years deepened, I realized, the layers started to peel back more and more and more. But what also happened when I started diving into specifically classical Tantra, or the traditional tantric system from India, is that I found a framework that explained so many of my deep internal and even external life experiences. Like it was just the biggest aha moment of my life, reading the texts from tantric scholars and masters and whatnot. And so before I was even really into the lineage practices and all of that, it already was changing my life. And what I will say about Tantra is it's like a string of breadcrumbs. There's like the first one's dropped and we're like, what's that? And we go and we follow it, and then it just keeps going. It's not a linear path by any means. And that's a big piece of the idea that I have around the concept of living Tantra, is that this isn't, the classical system is codified in particular ways. However, it's a doorway into the mystery. It's a spiritual science. There's nothing else like it on the planet, right? So if we think of spirituality and science, oftentimes we think of those as two different things. But in the realm of Tantra, it's like we're just in this mystery school where the secrets and mysteries of life are revealing themselves to us through us. But Tantra gives us the eyes to really see that, if that makes sense. So, living Tantra, I was going to go more into my background, but I entered into Tantra, long story short, I entered into Tantra from kind of the more Western view, which very much associates Tantra with sex and relationships and polarity and all of that. And that, I call it the gateway drug, because a lot of us in the West who do end up going deeper, most of us entered in through that gateway, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's powerful teachings there, but it's not what Tantra is actually, right? There's a lot of confusion and kind of watering down and even distortion that happens with the classical system when it comes into this kind of Western view. And it's not, by any means our fault in the West. I think there were, big gurus like Osho who had his own beautiful medicine, but there was, some things got a little taken out of context with that. And beautiful practices were created. But when we go deeper into Tantra, into the philosophy, into what the deities really are, into, Tantra is a path of relationship. It very much is. And it is a path of polarity. Polarity teachings are there. But what gets confused in the Western version of Tantra versus the Eastern is that it's a path of relationship because we're going to the very source of relationship. It's a path of polarity because we're going to the very source of polarity. So we can't so much simplify Shiva and Shakti, the main deities, god and goddess of Tantra, as masculine and feminine. It's like the characteristics are there. In some ways in this realm we have to understand things through this dualistic lens, but we understand as tantrics that duality is the great play of consciousness, and it all leads us back to one. So in living Tantra, and the idea of living Tantra, I realized that, I have a very particular karma, and those of us on the classical Tantra path, we have a very particular karma, right, that allows this opening for us. And I feel like any of you even here listening, some breadcrumbs have been dropped and you're here now, and that's how it works, right? But living Tantra was my idea because before I really fully went deep dive into the classical system, it was already doing its work on me. Just reading the text, just understanding the philosophies, going to schools of, where kind of Eastern and Western Tantra were kind of merging. So there was a strong traditional basis, but we were working with some of these Western Tantric principles. I realized that we really don't, in the East, there's this idea you have to have like the guru, you have to have the lineage, you have to be doing these very particular sadhanas, which I wholeheartedly believe in. But at the same time, there's so much from the system that we can bring into our lives for our own transformation and for deeper context and deeper communion with the fabric of existence, with, that just brings us closer to the heart, because the heart of Tantra is not the sadhana and the lineage and all of that. Tantra just brings us, but the heart of Tantra is available to everyone no matter what all the time. And that is our inherent divinity. That is our inherent goodness, I would say. That is our inherent beauty. That is our inherent connection to that which is so much greater. And every one of us has that. I don't care what religion you are, what path you follow, what gender you identify with. There is something that unites all of us. And when we connect more and more deeply with that something, in whatever way, that brings us into a state of union. that brings us into wholeness. And so Tantra, through just even the philosophy and the practices, because there is so much from the system that is very accessible, which is what we will be playing with in Temple of Shakti. I'll be teaching a lot of more traditional tantric practice, but things that are available to everyone. And because there's layers, it's like we have to go deeper. We have to ripen like the fruit from a tree, right? We have to bloom. We have to turn into that fruit. We have to ripen before we can be fully consumed by the divine in a certain way, right? So we'll be going as deep as we can go in this particular cauldron. So living Tantra is taking the tantric view, I call it. So we start to see through new eyes. We start to look at everything in life through this beautiful and powerful and profound lens that really leaves no internal or external stone unturned. And we start to see and experience, which is that's a key word in Tantra, because the wisdom comes from the direct experience. We start to have the direct experiences of how everything is so interconnected. And because of this experience particularly, I feel like Tantra is the medicine for our times. I feel like this is the balm that we all need to heal ourselves with, to help heal one another, to heal the world, is that sense of inherent communion, that we are in fact not separate from everything. We are an inherent and unique, beautiful piece of this whole tapestry. And so the tantric view helps us really see that. And so in the Temple of Shakti, what we are doing over the 6 months is we are starting to pull on that thread and see that whole tapestry through this tantric view. We start to see how and we really do, as we go from month to month in the Temple of Shakti, we're going into how the tantric lens, how specific tantric practice can support basically every aspect of our lives. Because let's be honest, the human experience is very dynamic, it's very multifaceted, and so we can take so many tools from Tantra to have, tools to remember when we forget, practices that can enrich our lives and give us a more solid ground to handle whatever life's throwing at us. One of the things I see, this is a tangent, but one of the things I see in a lot of for lack of better term, I'm just going to call it New Age spirituality, but we kind of fixate on just like having everything be perfect and positive, and, but it doesn't really give us the tools for when things are challenging, which I think over the last few years especially, we all have our individual challenges, but there have been a lot of collective challenges, and there are probably a lot more of those to come. And so what are the tools that keep us connected to beauty, that keep us sourced to power, that keep us remembering love in those times that we are challenged? And to me, that, our practice is as much for our health, for our connection to that mystical realm that is larger than us, right? The tantric view is always going to be the big view. It's going to be that ability to sit back from our personal dramas and stories and really rest into that larger space. And with all the dynamism, with everything we're facing, even just as a humanity these days, that will make our capacity so much larger. So I'm going to go into some of the nuts and bolts on what that looks like in Temple of Shakti. I'm going to specifically in this live, I'm just going to talk about months 1 and 2 to start. And then in the subsequent lives, as we have different topics, little different theories to go into, I'll be talking about the other months and what this tantric view, the practice of living Tantra. I also like to call it practical Tantra, because this is Tantra that we can bring into our everyday lives for transformation. So in month 1 of Temple of Shakti, and this is, Temple of Shakti, whether or not you're considering joining me for this amazing journey, these are still real things in your life, and what I'm sharing is still applicable, whether or not you're thinking to be part of this container. So in month 1, we're basically setting the space, because I 1000% as a practitioner for over 10 years now, I 100% believe that we have to set an internal and an external space to even get ourselves to our practice, right? To even, it's the reason we go into a temple and we're like, yes. But we don't have to wait to be able to go to a temple, right? To have that experience. We can set sacred space in our lives anytime, anywhere. It's a matter of intention. It's a matter of purity to some degree. And particularly in Temple of Shakti, what we're going to be looking at is our relationship to the elements, because the 5 elements are the building blocks of everything that exists. In Temple of Shakti, we're going to say they're the building blocks of Shakti. She's the supreme power, the feminine principle. But again, we want to use the term feminine lightly and not get attached to it. Within creation. So she's all of manifestation. She's everything that moves and changes, and she's light, she's energy, she's sound, she's everything, right? So the 5 elements are her building blocks. They're what make up our bodies on a gross level. Obviously, we have the very literal 5 elements on our planet. But what we don't often understand until we go into the deeper layers is that those 5 elements also make up our thoughts, our emotions, our ability to, they go in and out of balance, right? So as we start to develop a relationship to the 5 elements and we actually put them to use in an intentional way in our inner environment as well as our external environment, this really can create harmony. What is harmony at the end of the day? It's those 5 elements being in balance, right? I think we're all getting a crash course in what happens on the planet when those start to go out of balance. And what's happening outside of us in the tantric view is reflecting what's happening internally. So if we're experiencing a lot of chaos in our lives, there's a good chance that those elements are inside of us are out of balance. So we can actually affect the external by affecting the internal, and vice versa. So as we're going into sacred space in month 1 and developing this relationship with the 5 elements, we're going to talk a lot about altar building, how an altar can help anchor our awareness for our practice, and also just it helps, we have to find all these life hacks. Hi, Samsara. We have to find all these life hacks because, let's be honest, life is always changing. It gets full. Maybe we have kids. Maybe we have, we're working a night shift. Who knows what it is? But it can be hard at times to show up for our practice, and having that physical external altar. It's just like, if I just go get myself to the altar, I will do my practice. It acts as a focal point, an invitation to remember that the divine is here all the time. So we're going to be working in Temple of Shakti month 1 on building. So here we have living tantra, and now I call it a living altar, because this is not just a decoration. This is not just to make your space look or feel more spiritual. It would obviously it will do that, but it's deeper. We want to be tending the altar. We want to be in active relationship with the altar, because it is representing our relationship to the sacred, to the divine, and it's acting as a focal point for us to remember the divine in our daily lives, where we get lost in the mundane. We all do. It doesn't matter how long you've been a practitioner for, until you've reached the final gate, we all are forgetting and remembering again, and it's a dance, right? And we want to give ourselves the highest potential for resting in that space of remembrance more and more. So in month 1, we set sacred space first. So we'll be going into living altars, working with the elements, and I'll even be teaching some very simple but traditional mantras to work with the elements and establish them in the body and in the external space. And there will be a lot of invitations to spend time out in the elements in nature and make offerings to them. And I'm going to be teaching the 5 traditional offerings that we use in Tantra specifically, how those relate to our emotions. Like, it's a whole thing. That could be like a 6-month course in and of itself, but we're going to do that in the first part of month 1. And then in the second part of month 1, we're going into self-care rituals, because that's the foundation of everything. Sacred space and self-care, right? Though that's the foundation that then we're going to start building everything else on. So in the self-care rituals, I'm touching on, in Temple of Shakti, I'm touching on a lot of things that if you're connected with other leaders and feminine empowerment and all this, these are very common themes because, well, life is what it is. These are all themes in all of our lives, and we're all awakening to them. What is a little bit different about Temple of Shakti is that we're taking that classical tantric lens. So we will touch on some of the, what I call neo-tantra, that is, just to be clear, not based in traditional tantra, inspired by, but not actually based in traditional tantra, but will mostly be resting in the philosophies and views and practices of classical tantra from India. So, and that being said, I have been trained and continue to, it's a path that doesn't end. It's lifetimes. But I've been trained and initiated into both the Kashmir Shaivist path as well as Sri Vidya. So one of them has an emphasis on Shiva, the other has an emphasis on Shakti, and we'll be going into practices from both of those traditions, the ones that I'm qualified to share with you. So where was I? So in our self-care rituals, because we're basing everything in the view and in the seat of living Tantra / practical Tantra, we're going to be looking at self-care practices from this space. So I'm going to be teaching a lot of Ayurvedic self-care practices, but here's the curveball. My spiritual beginnings, my spiritual roots started in Taoism. And so I'm also going to be bringing in a lot of Taoist practice. There's a lot of crossover, but they are 2 separate systems. So in the self-care especially, we're going to be doing a lot of self-care specifically from Ayurveda, which is connected to Tantra, and from the Taoist system. So this is going to be really fun for me to just bring those together, and I'm going to teach you some of my very favorite self-care practices. And then this is also where we're going to start setting up the seat for establishing daily rituals and daily practices, because the most important part of any kind of transformation, whatever that's going to be for you, whatever is calling you to be part of this container or to explore Tantra in any way, shape, or form, we really can't make change without consistency, without showing up for the practices, showing up for ourselves, really is what it comes down to. And again, Tantra being a path of relationship, it's how do we show up for ourselves? How do we show up for others in our lives, which we can't do if we're not showing up for ourselves? How do we show up for our communities at large? How do we show up for the issues on the planet that we care about? How do we show up for the divine? For us to have a relationship with anything, we have to show up and we have to bring our presence, and what I like to call the marriage of devotion and discipline. Discipline without devotion can be really dry and not so fun. But devotion without discipline can kind of also just like, lose, just doesn't have the momentum, the fire it needs. We need both. We need both discipline and devotion, and we find that in the realms of Tantra. So I did want to talk about month 2 as well. We're going to do month 1 and 2. So I just talked about month 1 of Temple of Shakti. Month 2, we're going into sacred cycles, and what I call, and I love this term, enlightened sensuality. So with sacred cycles, again, we're going to be going, this is a mentorship for women and those who identify as women. So we are going to be talking about those cycles. I already talked a little bit about that with Shakti. We're always changing. So we are going to go into some teachings about the menstrual cycle and during our childbearing years and the larger cycle that we go through as women. Something really powerful in being in a female body is that we go through these natural tantric initiations just simply through our menstrual cycle, through giving birth and mothering, through, it's just like all the teachings, whether or not we're officially on the tantric path and there's a consciousness around it or not, we are going through these initiations in life. We are going through this deep and profound teaching into the nature of reality through our embodied experience in the female body. And, it's how we're gonna be looking at that in this course is going to be unique to a lot of other courses, because we're going to be looking at it in relation to tantric and yogic principles, such as the movement of the gunas, which I'm not going to unpack here. That's a whole other thing, but we're going to go into it in Temple of Shakti. We're going to be talking about the gunas and how they show up in life, how we can start to work with them. We're going to also bring in some of the ideas from Ayurveda here as well to support our cycles and how we move through those changes as women. And then I'm also going to definitely bring in a lot of the Taoist teachings in month 2 specifically because I find the Taoist teachings to be so incredible when it comes to our reproductive health and sex and sexuality, which we will go into in this module. Contrary to popular belief, especially in the West, the tantric system is very, very secretive when it comes to sexual practice. And the reason for this is that there is a lot of power that comes from these practices, and there's a level of maturity that's needed. And, most of society isn't there yet. This is one of those places that I feel like we have a lot of work to do around, again, our relationship. Tantra is a path of relationship. Life is all about relationship. Our relationship to our sexuality. We can learn all the practices we want around sex and sexuality, but if we don't have a healthy relationship to it, it doesn't matter. So in Temple of Shakti, that's really going to be one of our main focuses, is starting to have a allyship rather than an adversarial relationship to our cycles, our greater life cycle. Maybe we have an adversarial relationship with menstruation. Maybe we have an adversarial relationship to the idea of menopause and aging as a woman. Maybe we have an adversarial relationship to certain aspects of our own sex and sexuality. Well, Tantra is a path of liberation. And oftentimes we think of liberation, a lot of times Westerners are like, I don't know if I want to do that. That sounds like a big deal. It sounds inaccessible. Like, how does that relate to me? But when you really start to walk, to follow those breadcrumbs, to walk the path of awakening, what we start to realize is that we're actually becoming more simple. We're not becoming more complex. And it's a process of just becoming more and more natural, right? So if we have guilt, shame, traumas, these kind of things left over as residues in our sexual energy, in our relationship to sexuality, how we're expressing it, how we're not expressing it, whatever that looks like, how can we liberate if there's that stuck energy? And our sexual energy is our life force energy, right? It's what none of us would be here without it, right? But I think we're all uncovering layer after layer to develop a harmonious relationship with this. So that's why the second part of month 2 is about enlightened sensuality. I'm calling it sensuality because algorithms don't like the other word. But we will be talking about sex. And I will be teaching a lot of the Taoist practices because they're more clear. They haven't been quite as confused or adulterated as some of the tantric practices. But we will be touching on some of the kind of neo-tantric practices that I feel like are really there and solid and helpful. But we're going to be tempering all of that within the lens of classical Tantra. So you'll be getting a lot of practices and tools, including working with womb clearing and healing work that I've learned through the Taoist system. And but the main focus, even though I'm going to be giving all the practices, and then also in this training, you're going to get an entire week long, or 6 weeks, so 6 classes total of my Jade Temple, which is my school of Taoist sexual energy cultivation through 100% the Taoist system. So that's going to be included to support this kind of exploration. But in the mentorship calls around enlightened sensuality, what we're really looking at is fine-tuning that relationship and letting it be natural. Because sex and sexuality is so natural. It's a part of every one of our lives as humans, as animals, as plants. If you're here on this planet, this is a part of your journey. So as we heal and fine-tune that relationship and we become more natural within that experience, walking that middle path with it, our life changes, to be quite honest. The quality of our intimate relationships change. Our relationship to ourself changes. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So I think that's about what I wanted to cover today. There aren't so many of you on here anymore, but if anyone has any questions about the actual course itself, Temple of Shakti, or just some of the content that I've been talking about, you're welcome to just type those in and I'll answer those now. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Temple of Shakti. There's going to be a bunch happening this month. First of all, if you haven't already, you can go to the link in my bio after this and check out the landing page. It has all the information. It has the 6 months of content that we're going to be going through. There's also a little mini course for you to get a deeper taste, so you can sign up for that. It's free and it's right on there. So basically the outline of Temple of Shakti is that it's 2 mentorship calls with me a month going into living Tantra, and also, like I said, I'm bringing in the Taoist piece. My work is kind of focused on these 3 pillars, and that is Tantra, the Taoist feminine arts, and temple dance. So all of those are going to be included. So not only are there the 2 mentorship calls per month, but you're going to get 3 class series as a package within Temple of Shakti. So the first 6-week series is the Jade Temple Taoist Feminine Arts. This is the mother system of the Jade egg practices. In case you're not familiar with the Taoist feminine arts, probably you're familiar with all the yoni egg stuff. So we're going to go deeper into the traditional roots of that practice and the plethora of, that's just one part. It's like yoga, whereas like yoga in the West, it's a lot of just the physical practice, but there's this whole body of practice behind that. It's also true of the Jade egg practice. So we're going to go into the deeper system of traditional Taoist feminine arts. So we're also going to have a series of Shakti temple dance, which is my years of experience of a professional dancer. So it's going to weave in classical Indian dance that came from the temples of East India, as well as Central Asian dance and Middle Eastern dance. And we're going to be working with the elements in the body and learning some choreography, and also just enjoying being embodied and using dance as a means of awakening and communion between form and formless. Dance as an offering. Then the last series that's included is Tantra Yoga. So we're going to be looking at very traditional practices of pranayama, so breath practices, using mantras within asana, different meditation techniques, and asana, which means, vinyasa flows and that kind of thing. But specifically, we're going to be bringing in also the energetic aspect. So which asanas we use for which chakras, and mantras that we can use for that chakra also. So we're just bringing in a whole other layer to yoga, which is why it's called Tantra Yoga here. So that's pretty much what it is. And I'm running one last promotion for this month, and that is that if you sign up with a sister, because it's always more fun to share these things with our beloved sisters, you both get $250 off. So you can message me if you have a sister you want to sign up with, and we can chat about that, and I'll give you and your beautiful sister a coupon code. And I also have, besides the free mini course, I also have the opportunity, if you want to connect with me directly, you are welcome to just DM me here on Instagram. You are welcome to email me, or you can even set up a free 15-minute call with me. That's also on the Temple of Shakti landing page. You just got to go all the way to the bottom, and then you can sign up to do just a free call with me. And so we can talk one by one if you have any concerns or questions or anything like that. And the last thing I'm going to share about it is that because, so much of what I'm offering, I just wouldn't even have if I hadn't lived in India and I hadn't been part of that culture and generously welcomed into it. I have big scholarships for those of you of Indian descent. So if that's you and you are interested, please, please, please reach out to me and we can talk about that and get you in. It would be an honor to have your presence. So I think that's it. That was a lot. Are there any questions? If you're feeling shy, you can also just message me. All right, my loves. I think that was good for today. So I'll be doing a live again next week. If you enjoyed the talk today, you can join me again. It'll probably be on Wednesday, and then we don't have it set up yet, but I'm also going to be doing a free webinar, which will be a little bit of a deeper dive, and I'll also be sharing a little bit of practice, and that will be called Temple Arts for the Modern Mystic. And that will be, I'm guessing it'll be like the week of the 17th, maybe that Wednesday. So as soon as I have that all dialed in, we will have the promotion here for you on Instagram and the sign up and all of that. So Jai Ma, happy Devi Venus Friday. Today is the day of Venus. It's the day of Devi Shakti. So very auspicious day to start the conversation about Temple of Shakti. Yay! It's so wonderful to see some familiar faces and even past students here, and a soon-to-be part of Temple of Shakti also. Yay! Jai Ma. It just keeps going, right? All right, my loves. I'm going to close out. I'm going to save this, so if you came in late and you want to catch the beginning, it will be on my timeline shortly. All right. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone, and Happy New Year. I hope to have your beautiful presence with me in Temple of Shakti for a good part of that year. So let's see. Let's see what happens. All right.